So today, we're going to talk about what is a spiritual awakening or what is a spiritual breakthrough. So I know that, like, for those of you here today, that you already have some connection to your spiritual self because you've been working on yourself. And the question is what is a real spiritual breakthrough? What is an awakening? What is it? What happens when you start to have this connection or these thoughts, or you start to think about different things in your life and different ways of being and different ways of doing? And so what starts to happen when you're going through what we call a spiritual awakening? And what I'd even like to call it, for some of you, for some of you, is that you could actually be going through what we call a spiritual up-leveling, or taking yourself to a higher plateau. Because once we have that awakening, and I think you'll agree, that we're now in a mode of learning, growing, transforming, and setting intentions to move to a certain goal, or setting intentions to create certain ways of being in your life. So if we look at what are some of these common denominators in when you awaken sort of your spiritual connection, the first one is what we call heightened awareness. And then I say heightened awareness of what, So it's like a realization of what we call the interconnectedness of your internal or inner self, or your inner wisdom with a greater wisdom, or believing that there's a greater wisdom. And it's also a step in beginning to pay more attention, like to nature, like to what does nature really mean. We have the seasons, we have changes, we have growth, we have abundance. Nature in the wintertime, the leaves fall off, the trees are bare, and then there's kind of the cold period, and like we've just experienced recently with the snow and the ice. And then when spring comes, when the weather warms up, everything begins to grow, everything begins to come back and replenish. And that's somewhat relative to what I call a spiritual awakening, is that we'll start to have these recognitions, and then sometimes we move forward on those, and then we retreat. Sometimes we move back after we've learned things, and then we question things. And that takes me to the second behavior, is we start to question things. We start to ask ourselves, is this real? Is this the life that I want to live? Is there more out there that I haven't learned? We start to question perhaps our religion. We start to question society. We start to question things that may have happened in our childhood, things that we ask ourselves, why did that happen? Or why did I have the family I did? Or why have I had the experiences that I've had in my life? What's the meaning of that? Why has that happened to me? And a lot of times those questions that we ask, it could be around positive situations, or it could be around negative situations, or both, which most of us have in our lives. Is we may have a lot of negative things in our life, but we also have positive things. And sometimes we feel the need to question more about the negative than we do about the positive. The other step, or the other form of awakening, is emotional release. And that really means digging deep and understanding our emotional self, and understanding why we do the things we do, or why we behave the way we behave. It's about awakening and digging deep into patterns, or maybe even traumas or situations in our life that perhaps we didn't understand when we were younger, but now we're asking ourselves questions about that as we get older. And so emotional release is a big step in spiritual awakening, because sometimes we learn that the truths that we held may not be the truths that are real. And sometimes we see and we feel that something's not quite right, or that there's some kind of an energy or some kind of a block or situation or feeling that holds us back from really tapping into our emotions. Another step is the desire for solitude. And some people, when they have a spiritual awakening, they kind of retreat. They want to go within. They want to think. They want to meditate or sit in stillness or just retreat from society. And it's often been said that sometimes that's a good thing because it gives us time to really go deep and think about what's going on, what's happening in your life. Is there really a greater power? Is there really something that's happening to me? Some people actually ask, am I going crazy? And then sometimes you have friends and family that are saying, you are crazy, or you're acting crazy, or you're saying crazy things. And again, you start to question, why is that happening? But the desire for solitude is to try to get away from all the noise, try to get away from all the things that have been happening, and to really assess, where are you in your life? And where do you want to be? The next behavior is increased sensitivity. And that sensitivity could come in many ways. It's when I talk about sensitivity, there's so many levels of sensitivity that people experience. It could be a greater intuitive part of yourself. It could be that you just sense things around others. We talk about people that are empaths, and empaths are individuals that can feel the energy of others around them, and sometimes not even people that are directly around them. It could be people that are hundreds of miles away. And so your sensitivity becomes greater. And that can be a good thing, because now you're starting to become aware of how others or other situations impact you, and now you have the opportunity to change that or to make it different if you so desire. Another step is changing priorities. Now, I think that one of the greatest steps in developing your spiritual self is to really start to look at priorities. Because a priority could be that you are dealing with some internal issue that creates a lot of anger in your life, and you find that that anger is not serving you, and you start to realize, perhaps I should work on myself and start to work toward being more loving. So now you're changing your priority. My priority is not to express my anger or to express my dissatisfaction with things on a regular basis, but is to maybe switch that and start to focus on things that are more positive. And also, many people might go through a feeling of they need to serve more. They need to serve others. That a lot of people find that volunteering, going out and volunteering for a cause that they believe in or that they want to know more about, actually helps them start to feel better about themselves, and also opens up their energy to realize that serving others can actually make a difference in their life. So changing priorities can be a really big step in awakening your spiritual self. And then also, you might start to have physical symptoms. Some of those symptoms could be fatigue. It could be stress. It could be changes in your sleep patterns. It could be change in how you take care of yourself. And hopefully, as most people go through what we call spiritual awakenings, is that they start to implement what we call self-care, and that they start to recognize, and that, as each of you might go through a spiritual awakening, you're taking care of yourself. You're acknowledging things that are happening in your life. And you're also looking at things that you do in your life, and you're looking at those things that this works for me, this doesn't work for me? And how can I change that so that those things that work for me become greater and greater in my life? So those are some of the symptoms that most people experience. So now that you've experienced some of those, what do you do? How do you move forward? Like, what do you do then? Like, okay, I'm having this spiritual awakening and I'm going through all of these different symptoms, but now what do I do? So the next step is that you want to learn to integrate a lot of what you're going through. But sometimes that's not something you can do on your own. Sometimes that requires perhaps gathering with like-minded people, perhaps coming to events and programs that discuss what spirituality is. Also finding resources such as books, tapes, videos. You know, we all know that on YouTube we can learn just about anything. We can put any subject matter in, and it'll bring us something or someone that will share information with us. And of course, the goal is to take a lot of this in just initially lightly, because not everything that's out there is exactly what may work for you. It might work for others, but it may not work for you. But you want to be able to discern what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And also, too, integrating this new energy in your life. Sometimes some people step up to therapy. They step up to counseling, or they join groups to talk about what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, because sometimes it isn't as comfortable as you would want it to be. And then that leads us to that guidance is important, and that when you have guidance, just like anything else, just like learning, is that it helps you see and helps you be able to really look at yourself and to be able to say, okay, I understand. I see what's going on with me, and I want to be able to expand that. And it's always good to get feedback from others. It's always good to have others give you insight and to give you feedback, because you don't always see yourself as others see you. The other way to continue to move forward on this path is really to let go of the old. And I think that was probably the hardest step for me, was to truly let go of the things in my life that perhaps I continually would think about or dwell on and think, well, you know, because of this, I can't do this, or because of that, I can't move forward in this. And we really have to let go of the old. And that's letting go of old beliefs, old experiences, old trauma, old situations that, you know, some people, even in today's world, adults talk about how they were bullied as a kid and they still carry that energy. And to some point in your life, you have to let that go. Because if you don't let it go, it will always keep you from stepping into your spiritual self 100%. And I believe that when we truly take all the steps to move into more of being who we truly want to be, we start to feel more confident. We start to feel more sure of ourselves. Another way to continue to integrate your spiritual awakening is to embrace your own authenticity. Are you authentic? What are your values? What do you want to accomplish in life? How do you want to apply this new way of thinking and being? And to really get clear, who am I? I mean, I think all of us are always stepping forward and defining who we are. And situations, people, events, occurrences, and even years as we live define who we are authentically. And to become aware of that is what is my authentic self is really important, because I know one thing, and I've actually experienced this, is that the more vulnerable you are, and when I say vulnerable, that doesn't mean you have to tell your entire life story, but the more vulnerable you are in your everyday work with people, and that means being honest and authentic and vulnerable, the more people love you. The more people see the real you. They see who you are, and they can appreciate that. And I think vulnerability is part of authenticity, in that you're now sharing a part of yourself that maybe you haven't shared with others. And so as you step forward in becoming more and more connected to who you are, you also begin to learn that you're not alone. You're not the only person in this world that has experienced a situation that perhaps has kept you stuck, or that you're not the only person in the world that's dealt with some of the issues that you've had to go through. And then another way, and a final way in moving forward, is really exploring new paths. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said is seek out programs, seek out information, seek out classes, groups, find yourself like-minded, kindred spirits that you can converse with or talk to or learn from. And then you learn more about yourself when you do that. So what are some experiences that people have had that have had these, what I call spiritual awakenings? So I'll use an example. You may or may not know Eckhart Tolle. And Eckhart Tolle was dealing with a lot of things in his life, and he wrote The Power of Now. And he experienced what we call a sudden awakening. And he has a whole story about how that happened. But for him, he went into an intense depression. He immediately went into this deep depression. And he took the time to stay conscious about, why am I in this depression? Why is this happening? And by continuing to question and continuing to understand and experience what was happening to him, it led him to understanding his spiritual awakening, and it brought him the ability to share his knowledge and to bring him into inner peace. And so, as we all know, he's been around for many, many years and has written many books and conducted many workshops and has shared his knowledge and his awakening. Now, not all of us will ever have that kind of experience, but that was his personal experience. You know, we talk about Oprah Winfrey. You know, that's kind of a common household name in the world. And Oprah Winfrey went through a lot of traumatic events in her childhood, a lot of situations that most people probably would think they couldn't survive, or they would not be able to work their way out of the negativity of the things that she experienced in her life. And in her life, she literally was able to turn that around and step into a totally different life and create more power in her life and to connect to her spiritual self. And as you know, she became a huge influence in the world of spirituality, and she also brought to the table many, many spiritual leaders that also shared their information with us. Another person that many people admire is Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela actually showed us what I consider the power of forgiveness, because Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for many, many years, and during that time, he went deeply within himself, and he continued to tap into his own spiritual connection. And then, of course, many years after being released from prison, he was able to step fully into the spiritual leader that he is and was, and share with millions of people what I call the power of his forgiveness and the power of his leadership and the power of his influence. And that's how his spiritual awakening and continuation brought a lot of knowledge and change in the world. And then you think about the movie and the book, Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And that was a great movie for many people. It inspired many men and women. about just take off, go travel the world or just go take a journey and just see what the universe brings you. And sometimes that's a way to really enhance your spiritual connection because you don't know where it's going to lead you. You don't know what the end is going to be. And sometimes that can be exciting and fun. It can be scary to some people, but it also is what I call total trust in yourself and in a greater power. And I know I've even shared a lot of times that early in my spiritual awakening and developing, there would be times where I'd just get in the car and drive. And I would just say to myself out loud, okay, where to next? Turn left, turn right. Okay, go down here, go to this street, go to this shop, go to this restaurant. Just go see what happens. And every time, something beautiful would unfold. I would meet someone interesting. I would end up in a beautiful place. I would have maybe just a time where I might end up, like one time I ended up at a beautiful park. And I just sat there for a while admiring the trees and the grass and the beauty of this park and just feeling connected and feeling grateful. And that was actually, that particular time was a time when I really needed to feel grateful for things in my life. And I was not taking the opportunity to do that. So that brought me to what I would call a very profound moment in realizing that I wasn't grateful for the things I had in my life. And sometimes being humble about that is important. We have to really take a look at where are we? What do we have in our life? What's important? So what would be some of the signs that you're moving forward and really stepping into your spiritual self? So some of the signs would be that you're really starting to feel at peace with yourself and with others. And what that means is that it might mean that the person that's always irritating you doesn't irritate you anymore. You're kind of like, okay, no problem. Or the person that you always want to argue with about something, you find yourself, I'm not even going to argue with that person. I'm just going to be okay with what they're doing. I'm just going to listen. In fact, maybe I'll spend more time listening to others as opposed to sharing what I want to talk about. Because I know for a fact that when you really get comfortable with yourself, you're very comfortable sometimes just sitting and listening to others talk. Even though you may want to talk, you may want to respond, but you force yourself and you say, okay, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to listen to what this person is saying because I know perhaps there's something I can discover that's new that I haven't discovered before because I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And in almost every situation, you literally learn something by listening because when you are having a conversation with someone, if you stop talking and you're looking at them and you just don't say anything after responding, they will start talking because that's a human behavior. We don't always like silence, and so we feel like we have to fill it with something. So the art of listening can be extremely important because the person that's talking will keep talking. And you can just nod your head and you can say, I understand, and just be silent. And they'll keep talking. And that's how sometimes you awaken yourself and you awaken others as well. Another way is that you'll start to feel comfortable about setting intentions or daily goals and accomplishing them because you know that you are ready to step in some new ways of being that you haven't been in before. And sometimes setting goals and intentions that may be a little like outside your box or outside your boundaries. You're like, oh no, I'm too afraid to do that. But sometimes we find that the thing that we're most afraid of is the thing that we should step into. Many years ago, I had some things going on in my life, and I just felt like I had to set an intention to really show the universe that I trusted the universe. So I went skydiving. And I have to say, it was frightening. It's very frightening when you have to sign papers that say, you may die because you're jumping out of an airplane. And I remember even in that moment going, do I want to do this? Because you can actually say, okay, I've decided I'm not going to do this. And I had a moment of wondering, could I do this? And I decided I could. And I used that as a metaphor for kind of starting a new life, for letting go of the old in my life and embracing the new, and showing the universe that I trusted 100% that I was going to be able to jump out of that plane and land on the ground safely. And I did. And that changed my life dramatically because I realized that I trusted that I would be okay because I knew it in my heart. I knew that even though, yes, I was a little afraid, but I knew in my heart that the universe had my back and that I would land on that ground safely and that I would be okay. And I have to say that after I experienced that and landed on the ground, I was like, let's do it again. Because then it was like it opened up a part of me that I had never felt before. So when you're moving into your spiritual awakening, you may find yourself jumping into things, not a pun, but jumping into things that move you forward in a great way and that help you release old things in your life that you were dwelling on all the time. So it is important sometimes to step into some things that perhaps you're afraid of, but that are not life-threatening. The other way that you might start to see that you're really moving into more of a spiritual behavior, spiritual personality, spiritual being, is that your relationships start to improve. Maybe relationships with family, maybe relationships with loved ones, or maybe you're bringing in new relationships and they're different than what you've experienced before. And it can also mean letting go of some people that are just not a good energy, or they don't resonate with your energy, or you don't resonate with them. And then you're recognizing that other people that are more like you are starting to come into your environment. And it's always good to always be seeking people, especially if you're on this spiritual path, to seek others that you can learn from, to seek others that can give you insight or advise you, or even those sometimes that you might seek that you don't agree with. That I know there's a lot of people that I don't necessarily care for the things that they say or talk about or teach, but I do like to watch them because I like to understand how other people think and why they think the way they do, because I can't say that the way I think is the only right way to think. It doesn't, I mean, I have to be willing, we all have to be willing to be able to step on the other side. Now, it doesn't mean we have to stay there or we have to like it, but it does mean that we get a different perspective. And that's what's important in spiritual awakening, is to learn that you can build a different perspective about life, about yourself, and about others around you, and about the world. And that's what opens you up, is being able to step into a new way of thinking, being, and doing. Because in today's world, the energy is speeding up. The world is different. Society is different. We have all kinds of things happening. And it's incumbent upon us to step up as well and to find the things that serve us and to find the things that are truly going to bring us to a place of peace, harmony, love, and joy. Because that's really what we're striving for, is love, peace, joy, and harmony in our life. And then one of the last behaviors is that you'll find yourself being interested in developing your creative self, and that you'll also attract more creative opportunities and situations in your life. And when I talk about creative, I mean just creative minds, creative people, creative events, creative opportunities, perhaps classes, but you'll find yourself wanting more of that. You will want to express yourself more. You'll want to be able to, as we go back to that authentic self, you'll find that that's the person that you want to be able to share with the world. And then the last part is that as you work more and more on yourself, you start to realize that challenges are not so big anymore, that you can really step into and overcome any challenges that come your way. Because if you can look at challenges as opportunities, your whole life will change. There's always an opportunity in a challenge, no matter what that challenge is. Because it may not be the opportunity that you want, but it's still an opportunity. And sometimes that challenge becomes the gift that helps you move forward. Because now you have to figure out a way to work through that challenge, or to step over it, or to jump over it, or to dissolve it completely. And when you're faced with that, when you really step into and connect to who you are at a deep level, there's always a solution that'll come forth, especially if you trust that the universe will provide that solution. Because when you learn to align your energy with the energy of the universe, guess what? The universe delivers. It starts to bring forth those things that you seek. So, stepping into your spiritual self, developing yourself spiritually, being in this, what I call this mode of spiritual awakening, is a lifelong journey. It is a journey that we all have experienced at perhaps a tiny level, and then many at a big level. And it's up to you what you do with it. And as you move forward in your life, there will be more and more opportunities for you to be able to step into connecting with who you are spiritually, because that's really why we're here. We're here on a journey on this planet, and we're here to reconnect with a divine energy, because we are eternal light beings, energetic beings that have come here to experience this human life. And if you find that you're being drawn to waking yourself up, then that's your first step into expanding and stepping into your spiritual self. So thank you for being here today. And I'd like to open it up for any conversation or discussion about some of the things that you've heard today. Like, have you yourself experienced some things around this? And what do you think has been a defining moment or a defining point in your life as you move forward?